Welcome to CX Exchange Success Hour. Truly excited about this next few sessions we have about AI and CS. It's all very scrappy and practical, yet somehow strategic ways to use AI in your CS program, which is really critical that we make this transition with the rest of our industry here. So, scrappy ways to use AI and automation in CS is our topic today. We've got Shawn Stiffler back with us. He's been doing a couple other sessions around AI and foundations in CS, so we're excited to have him back. Welcome, Shawn. And
Thank you.
for those who may not be familiar with you, please share a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks for having me back. I'm Shawn Stiffler. I'm Director of Operations and Success at Dr. Genius, and we serve the SMB private practice healthcare space, offering services and software. So I manage everything post sales, and I've been with them for coming up on 10 years.
Wow, really? That's
Yes,
amazing.
long time.
Yeah. All right. So let's dig into the slides to kind of give people some idea of the topic that we're discussing today. Can everyone see the slides? Thumbs up. All right.
Good to go.
And let me just do a couple more things before we get started here. All right. So just to give you some context, Shawn in the past has presented how he has used AI tools in unexpected yet interesting ways and applied sort of foundational aspects of CS. But this time that didn't happen. This time started off where he lost a headcount in support and said, okay, since they're doing so many manual things, I'm going to go and get a tool for the team, make them more efficient and happier in their roles instead of just hiring more people to do a manual task that was not a labor of love, right? He surveyed the team, confirmed what they considered to be their top challenges and that these things could be addressed by an AI native tool. He made the business case, he even got it approved, and then poof, there went the budget. It gets approved and now it's gone. And so what happened? It actually was a story that had a good ending, right, Shawn?
It did. I'm fighting an eye twitch hearing about the budget approval and then budget disappearing, but yes, had a very happy ending. So it was good.
I was trying to cough with the audio off, but I didn't do it. All right. So you we wanted to share with you then what kind of tool you were looking for, what sort of requirements you came up with, because this then ended up impacting what you did as sort of a roundabout way of getting there, right? So share a little bit about what you were looking to solve for here.
Right. So we were looking to solve for insights on inbound emails and some context. Our clients primarily communicate with us via phone, then email, and phone we already have a solution for. So we needed insights on inbound emails. So sentiment analysis, topics, key topics that are brought up, and maybe even discovering some unknown unknowns. An early churn warning system based upon what we determine is a churn identifier, and then scale frontline support with their various tasks. And that's what we were looking to accomplish previously with the tool. And we found two viable tools. So to name them, they're Natomi and Maven AGI, and they worked for us. But as we've reviewed, budget disappeared, and we still had the same problem to solve for. And so we embarked
And
on.
you were about to sign on the dotted line with a tool, right?
That was a heartbreaking part. Yes. So I had an email with an agreement and all that. And then I received another communication that spend across the board is being paused. And
So what did you do next besides cry?
yes, besides cry. Excuse me. So besides cry, I so happen to be in a continuing education course, which is in the appendix, and it's free and it's wonderful. And there's many courses you can take there. And it so happened to be on developing systems with OpenAI's API. And so I went to Google. That was just it. We have the same problem. The problem doesn't go away just because the budget goes away, and we need to solve for it.
So
And
when you say you turned to Google, so you were doing Google search like the old
correct.
school way.
Yes. So I found myself with maybe there's another solution out there that gets me most of what I'm looking for. And this was the search I searched. So can Salesforce, which is our CRM we use OpenAI's API for case, which is what is email for case sentiment analysis. And that actually returned a OpenAI's API that is developed to integrate with Salesforce for case sentiment analysis. It returned a several page PDF document step by step on how to do it. It returned a lot, and it was very welcome news. And we sent it off to engineering. It was really straightforward. For those of you that work with engineering, I shared here it's 14 story points for our team, and it checked off a bunch of boxes and a few other boxes. So you have negative sentiment, you have sentiment analysis, churn warning, all this data, insights. But now what? If it's just sitting there, it's still not it's super useful. Well, we have automations that are now available. So we detect this case or email is negative or has something in there that needs a human set of eyes. Then we can trigger whoever the individual contributor support rep who owns that account or that relationship is working that. They can get a note, get a task created. Leadership can also have an automated alert sent so their eyes can get on it to support the rep. And then there's other, of course, workflows and automations you can develop off of it. But that's what we discovered.
And in case everyone doesn't know what an API is, what is an API?
And so API, it allows you to directly connect your, say, your platform to another platform. And so you will be working off of their large language model. And you do need a little bit of engineering resources there, but it's a nice and useful way to integrate
All right.
different software solutions.
So any thoughts or questions from folks before we kind of go on to the next steps and some other things that he's done? Oh, there's some notes, I guess, in the chat, but anybody want to come off mute or you want me to read it from chat? Do the automations come from AI or Salesforce? Don't really get how that works. So I think, Shawn, what you would say is that first you're getting the sentiment analysis done through the OpenAI, right? So
Correct.
OpenAI is analyzing it.
Correct.
So the data lives in Salesforce, but it's connected via API over to OpenAI. OpenAI is analyzing it and coming back and saying, hey, there's this issue here, or there was this sentiment, or you're doing scoring or a variety of different things, right?
Right.
And based upon what it returns in that information, then you have some automations that are set up in Salesforce to then do some additional, set up a task or send out an email internally or some other things like that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a great question. The automations occur within Salesforce based upon a sentiment score. And some of the things I like the most about the automations are you have your initial automation, which is, hey, here's a potential problem. But even that can slip through the cracks. If you have a lot of work, you get pulled in different directions. You have rules that you can create that will continue to ping leadership and the individual responsible for it until this email or potential issue is resolved. There's a lot you can do. So that happens within the CRM. And so through the scrappiness of having to solve this problem, but you don't have budget anymore. Quick note on that: the expense using the API, so which you get billed in tokens. Google it; it's extremely, or it's very inexpensive, is one way to put it. So
Compared
that was
to the tool, right?
oh my goodness, yes. But
Yeah.
and so the tools you're purchasing, that's something that's done for you, right? There's a benefit in
Right.
that too. But if you do go to build yourself or leverage these APIs, the expense is pennies. I mean, it really is small. And over time, maybe several dollars, but it's quite small.
Right.
Through the scrappiness of working with OpenAI's API, this kind of took its own life of its own, and we've now added multiple different AI features using OpenAI's API, Anthropic, which is Claude, and developed that into some of the products we offer our clients too. So it's really grown, but it was born from being forced to be scrappy and solve a problem.
And so since you had made the business, and we'll get to you in one second, Aisha, but since you had made the business case, you had your executive team bought into the idea that you should try and have this analysis, then you got the budget cut from it. Then you came up with this alternative, which was much cheaper. You got your CTO on board with the idea. Once he and his team started working with the OpenAI API, connected it up to Salesforce and started to see how easy it was and how powerful it was. Then they started thinking about ways they could use it in their own product and things that they could then offer your customers. And it was valuable to your customers, what you were offering to them and building for them. And yet it was also very inexpensive. And so became another profit center for you in terms of what tool you were building out and offering to your customers as well. So there was a lot of pluses in this process from it. Aisha, what questions you have? And then we have some other things that are scrappy.
Yeah, no, Shawn, that's great. I love what I've heard. Just a quick, I'm assuming you coded to OpenAPI specs, or they gave you specs and you coded to it. Were there any security concerns? Did InfoSec vet this? Because I can imagine in a fintech environment I worked in, this would raise a lot of security concerns about privacy and client data. So just wondering, was that ever a concern or?
I would say it's always a concern when we're evaluating even other vendors and AI, but for this particular use case, it wasn't that large of a concern with what we were giving it access to analyze.
But that's a great question because that is always something you want to take a look at.
Yeah, the information that's going through that channel communications, what wasn't really of concern.
It was more just like support ticket issues that came up, nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And given the industry that we're in, but yeah, so the nature of the context of the content is not that concerning.
Okay. So here's something that's even simpler, does not require any engineering. Tell us about this, Shawn.
Right. So that's an engineering solution if you have some of those resources available. And here's very simple: ChatGPT content creation. We've probably seen a lot of articles on that, heard about that, but we recently used it for customer education and marketing content deliverables. Like many companies, we just have constrained resources and many priorities, and we needed to get some customer education pieces out there, or customer marketing regarding some tools that we offer. And so this to show our team that, hey, it's really simple. Let's just ask ChatGPT to consume some knowledge surrounding our product and give AI some instructions, and then ask for a certain output. And perhaps that can help our team on the marketing side get 70 or 80% of their job done. And then we do some minor edits and launch. And so we did that. And this was for a new feature adoption campaign. And I included the workflow that we took just to give a very simple example for anybody who hasn't used AI even at all. Gave instructions to ChatGPT, Pardot, which is our marketing automation platform. Once we had the piece at a level that we were okay with, the marketing piece, we loaded it, set up a list, sent it to our customers. We have Mixpanel, which is product analytics. It's on the back end of our application to track usage and drop off and all these other product analytics. And we could confirm we had a successful feature adoption, and we cut down the time. Well, I don't have exact hours, by dozens of hours of going back and forth with marketing content and editing and so on and so forth. So that's a very straightforward example.
And just to clarify, so with the customer education pieces, it was something where you were challenged at how much your team could produce, because it was labor intensive to write everything up manually. So instead you showed them, hey, here's a prompt, you're most of the way there. Now you can just take a few minutes to clean it up. So it was something that they were already trying to do, but it was hard to keep up with the demand. And then with the monthly marketing content deliverables, this is something that, because you do marketing in some cases for the dentists and medical offices, right? So you have these deliverables, and it was challenging to come up, to keep up with all of that, right?
Correct. Just
Yeah.
constrained resources like most of us are
Yeah.
going through with
Yeah.
competing projects.
Right. So this was a way where he was able to take a few minutes, come up with a prompt, share it with his team and say, hey, look, it's easy. Now you can work on it there. So for the design work, Heidi has a question. Did you use it for the content or also for the design work?
So we've used it for both in different use cases. So like lead gen or demand generation, we've actually used AI for avatar creation and avatar design and content creation. And for this particular piece, for our design, we were just using Canva, but we also layered in the content from ChatGPT. Hopefully that answered your question. But a tool that we also use is HeyGen. It's a pretty
What is
impressive
that?
tool. HeyGen, HeyGen.
All
And
one word?
all one word. They're getting really close to pretty good, realistic avatars with matching a lip sync to a human voice.
Oh, great. Thanks, Michaela, for sharing the link there. Great. Now, you have also been working with some things because you've been learning some Python coding. So this gets into more technical aspects, although there's a lot of business people who learn how to use Python, and it's the easiest of any of the coding languages to learn. But and probably at some point, these AI agents, pretty soon will be no code solutions anyway. But tell us a little bit about agentic. What is agentic AI? What have you been using it for? What are you excited about doing? And how's it going to help you be scrappy?
Yes. So we all may see that word a lot, or you will now, agentic like workflows or agentic flows. This is really exciting. Some of you may be well versed in it, but Crew AI is a tool. It's one of many. There's Agency Swarm, and it allows you to create teams of AI agents, and each AI agent does a very specific thing. It's user defined, so you define that, and you have guardrails and other directions and instructions you would give each agent, and then it can happen. So then you have a team, much like a human team, and these agents all do different things. And you could have one agent that manages the other agents. You can integrate with different APIs to do Google searches, and you could do all sorts of things with it. So I just wanted to provide that to everyone that is here, that this may be worth looking into, especially if you tend to be a more technical individual and you have time. I included a series done by, I believe his name is Tyler. Very straightforward. I was able to develop a crew of agents in Python and had it create a piece of content and then write multiple other pieces of content related to the main topic, but slightly different with some instructions. Then one agent goes and fact checks the other agent's work, and you could do many other things with it. So it's just an exciting development in the AI space that I think.
So this is sort of like automation on steroids in a sense, right? When you think
Oh
about
yeah,
automation has certain triggers, and when it sees a certain condition, then it will, trigger an email or trigger a task, or, it can trigger lots of things. But when you have an agent, an AI agent, as part of these succession of sort of automations, then instead they can literally do things like check, like do a search or check for language, or check for sentiment, and do things that otherwise you would have to go and write a prompt for, right? So you can
right.
kind of have it check for things so that you're not sitting there writing a prompt for it. Instead, it's an AI agent doing that you've set up in advance, and you can
Right.
make it kind of almost super conditional. So it can say, and if you see any of these things, then this or then that, and you can, if that makes sense, or does anybody have questions based upon this?
Right. So you could think of a newsletter, right? And you're a subject matter expert in health tech, and you just want to stay aware of anything new that may be occurring. You could run your Python code just every morning, and the agents will go look in specific areas on the web for specific type of content that it's considered reliable, and there's controls for that. And it will spit it out in a markdown file. And you will have, that's one use case, a newsletter you could share with your customers, or just for you to be aware of anything new happening, or a public company you want to go take a look at some of their public documents and do some analysis. You could do that too. So it's really up to you, but it's just an exciting development that's pretty interesting. And as you dig into it, if you go and watch those videos, I think you may imagine what you can do with it.
And those things are all in the resources. Okay.
Right.
And then Michaela, we're going to switch over to just straight old, regular old automation that you can do that can help you be scrappy using these kinds of things. But Michaela, you had a question here in the Slack.
Yeah, this is super interesting. Thank you, Shawn, for sharing. I'm curious how, like, it sounds like you're a technical solution. You're very scrappy yourself. How do you strike the balance of doing this, going really deep solutioning versus enabling your team to do this? And like, is your team enabled on Crew AI? Do you have that like within your organization, or do you build custom GPTs? Like, just curious how because you could imagine if everyone knew how to use Crew AI, it could, exponentially sort of disrupt the way your entire, success and operations business
Totally. I
works.
think that's a
Curious.
really, really good question. I work to first enable my team to step into learning these things on their own, and for them to try to go use these tools, whether it's a small budget approval or it's free, and they can go tinker around, and we make a business case for it as teams, depending on what we're talking about. For something like Crew AI, I wouldn't put that on their plate. Will I will step into that and see how difficult is this first. And if there's a proof of concept, then I can share, then turn it over to teams and with some guidance. So hopefully that answers your question.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to hold off on the scrappiness. I have to step back and make a case and help guide teams. But if there's something a little more technical, I may dive into it on my own time and just see how challenging it is.
Okay, so now here what we have is that you were coming up with ways to automate within Salesforce, and you've done this at, even with setting up a customer journey by adding opportunity objects so that your onboarding team and other teams can track what's happening with each customer, and you're able to then measure it, that sort of thing. And we have that in the resources. But what kinds of things were you doing here? And then pretty soon we're going to head out to our breakout groups.
Great question. So this is for anyone that's resource strapped and you still need to try to figure out a way to manage your work. And Salesforce is where my experience lies. HubSpot, I'm sure, has some great automation capabilities too. But in Salesforce, you could go right into their workflows and create a couple rules that will, in my opinion, if you don't have it, totally change your life with work. Like SLA response times. You try to respond to all your customers, but responses can slip through the cracks. You can create a very simple automation to just remind you, hey, this email has not received a response for an hour or for 2 hours or whatever your SLA is. And that's at a very straightforward level. And then you could continue with different conditions based upon product, like seats or size of the account or potential of the account. And you could have different rules, but you could go real high level. Hey, if I haven't responded in 2 hours, I want a notification in Salesforce and an email sent to me that I need to respond. And so that's a support case or email follow-ups, SLA responses. For follow-ups, you could designate if an email is labeled a certain status, then an automation flow kicks off, such as we need a clarification from our client who requested us to do something. We could set it in a clarification status, and every 24 hours, 40 hours, 48 hours or so, an automated email will kick off. Hey, we need clarification from you on XYZ. All the while we're outbound calling and reaching out to the client too, but we still have some cadences there. And same with case volumes. For our particular use case, we have 4 different product tiers, and depending on the tier, different case or email volumes are considered acceptable and not problematic. However, if we receive 10 or 20 emails within a short period of time, usually that's indicative of a problem not being resolved, and we have our client and support just going back and forth. The CSM will be tagged to step in to see if they can help. On the other side is if we haven't heard from a customer, from an email in a period of time, that could be a problem. And an internal task is created for the CSM to just take a look at the account, reach out, make sure we have active communication and everything's okay. All of that's possible within Salesforce. And that is correct, Heidi.
Thank you.
And that's a way of being proactive and preventative. And so that before you get to a place where you're surprised that your customer is angry or has, found another solution or things like that, you are able to set these types of alerts based upon, how they're interacting with you, right? And how that gets recorded in Salesforce, that kind of thing. And if you even did something where it was based upon the sentiment analysis that was built in as well, you can do some things that trigger then proactive ways of connecting. But Kimberly has a question, and then we're going to head out to breakout.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is super helpful. I also work in post-sales, but as an IC for like a very cost-strapped ed tech, and we use Salesforce and no CS platform. And so my question is, a lot of times when I'm trying to do different automations or trying to figure out processes, part of the problem is I don't have the right access to Salesforce within our organization, which obviously that you couldn't fix. But what I'm wondering is did you ever hit up into plan problems? You know what I mean? Because sometimes when I'm thinking of, as in the pricing plan for Salesforce, I'm wondering how much I could push up and say hey, I want to do this thing, I don't have the right access, but I'm curious, especially since you've mentioned budget, just kind of if there was any Salesforce sort of cost things that I should be aware of if I'm asking my higher ups to maybe implement things that I want them to try with Salesforce automations.
It's a great question. I believe the workflow automation should come with it may depend on license, but enterprise license. I know surveys, which we've implemented and deployed, that's a per survey expense after a certain amount. So that may have a nominal cost, but the workflows, that should be part of your license, I would think. So as far as I'm concerned, there was no additional budget other than our normal renewal that we renew with Salesforce every year.
All right, great. So we're going to head out to breakout session, and these are the questions here. You'll also see them in the breakout note. Hey, it was great to see all the conversations going on out there.
A lot.
Yeah, what kinds of things came up?
Well, Mary's going through something similar with automating through Salesforce. So we happen to get paired up in a group. So that was really nice. So she's going through the automation process, replacing Gainsight. Maybe Mary could speak about that. But it was a great group to be a part of because we are very deep in the automation space of Salesforce.
Yeah, good. Mary, was there anything you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, it took us about a year. We had the idea about a year ago when I said I didn't want to pay for Gainsight another year, and we were in Salesforce, and Gainsight connection kept kind of breaking, and they kept asking for more money, and the data kept falling apart. I enlisted in our Salesforce admin, and I also talked to somebody else, got kind of an idea that was doing the same thing. Our sales was already in Salesforce, using it. We were already paying for it. How do we build that out with special objects and a customer journey and So we have that all built out, but they said I couldn't do any automation until that was done. And then next year I get some more hours from our admin team to roll out some automation on we need to know what are the things that we can automate and where do we need to be human. So I will be connecting with Shawn for some ideas there.
Right, to get more going on. Yeah, definitely. And there's always the community, because besides the two of you connecting, there's going to be other folks who will either be interested in it or might have some insights and experience with it too. So yeah, great. Maybe we'll do a session on that. Kimberly, what came up for you?
Yeah, we were talking about a whole bunch of different things, but the one thing I wanted to just raise in case anyone has any resources around this are, like I was mentioning that I've been starting to use AI to like help me analyze a lot of my client like engagement and different things, like trying to figure out, upsell calculations, trying to figure out if I can do things kind of in mass so that I don't have to do them individually. And one thing that I've encountered, of course, is like the hallucinations or just like the difficulty with accuracy. And there's kind of this tipping point, right? Where you're like, if you're continuing to check each one, like to make sure that it's accurate, at some point you're like, I've been at this for 3 hours, if I really save the time. So I've been sort of playing around with Merlin AI, which kind of combines the different models, just like actually trying to almost ask itself, like, how can we build in some different like validation checks, and things, and it's like spitting out all this code and we're going back and forth, and it seems like it's helping. But I was just wondering, those of you who are a little further down the journey than me, if you have any tips of like things that you've looped into your automation or your processes to like add that, extra checking beyond what you, of course, are manually going to do.
AI hallucinations. Yeah. Who has some thoughts about that? Michaela, you came off mute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remember it's not a calculator, it's a language model. So it's really good at words, but it's not great at numbers. And it can hallucinate there, which, as to your point, Kimberly, is very tricky when you're trying to quantify. So a healthy amount of formulas mixed with if you're doing it in a spreadsheet or whatever tool you're using, if you can try to make it as clear as possible. Checking the math should be sort of the human in the loop part of that. But I hear you on that. That is a tricky challenge.
And that's something too, in 2 weeks, when David Brady comes, he's done a lot with working with ChatGPT and Claude and different ones, where he literally will show, hey, you were not correct, you were not accurate in this response. Do you understand how you weren't accurate? And sometimes it'll come back and say, and other times he'll say, this is how you weren't accurate. And they'll say, oh, okay, I can correct it. So there are also some ChatGPT and other like Claude and sort of chats that he'll be able to share, where you can kind of keep it in line and get it to keep itself in line. And sometimes too, you can also just ask, when you're creating a prompt, how, this is what I want to do. What's the best prompt to get it, and then see what it does. And if it's getting you there, and you kind of start off by going back and forth. Shawn, you also shared a link to one of your chats in the session as well, right?
Correct.
It
That's
was
in the
in the
slide
earlier part, right?
Yes,
So,
it's in the slideshow. So depending on use case, but you could instruct your GPT or whatever LLM you're using to only access certain documents or to only create communication or piece of content based upon certain documentation. So that's one guardrail for those types of hallucinations. Try to get rid of them.
yeah. Any other insights that came up or questions that came up? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. We already went a few minutes over, so I'll let you get back, because I know for some people it's really late in the evening. Next week, Michaela is going to be back, and she's going to be sharing an easy framework that will help guide you through how to make changes to and improvements to your CS program. and using AI. So it should be a great discussion. Thank you again, Shawn. Always enjoy when you come to share with us, and I hope that it got you thinking tonight. And if nothing else, if you're not sure what to do, you can always go over to ChatGPT and say, what are some ideas for X? And see what ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or any of those LLMs, what they come back with. So excellent. All
Thank you
right.
for having me. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.